What is up, guys? I'm back with another tutorial. This time we're looking at kicks, fat, warm and distorted kicks, perfect for minimal house or other house genres. So in this video we're gonna look at the kick plugin from Sonic Academy. And I know this is the old version. I know that there is a new version called Kick 2, but we're gonna use the same approaches, so you can use the same approaches in Kick 2. So let's go. So if we look at the interface of the plugin, we have the pitch envelope, we have the amp envelope, we have the click envelope, then we have some volume and pitch of the click, and you can choose the click sample here. Then you have some EQ settings, you have some sub volume and some drive, and then you have this Nicky Romero distortion unit. And I just use it sometimes because it's really harsh on the drums, so they start to sound more like hardstyle kicks. So let's start by looking at the pitch envelope. So here you tune your kicks to your project. In my instance, I'm writing my track in the key of C minor. So the note G is in that scale. So in this area, you have the lower octaves of the frequency spectrum. And then as you go higher up, you have it higher pitched. So if we listen to it. So as you could hear, if we pull up like the pitch here, you can hear it sounds more like a sap, or it doesn't sound that much as a kick drum. And that's because it's too high pitched. So you would rather have it here because that's what controls the click noise. So that's the pitch envelope. Okay, let's move to the amp envelope. And the amp envelope is actually controlling the waveform of the kick. So what you can do if you pull this to this side, it's gonna sound more clicky, more snappy. And if you have it here, so it's kind of delayed a little bit, your kick will sound a little bit more rounded and softer. So let's take a listen. So hopefully you could hear the difference. Okay, now we are moving to the click. You can actually find a lot of click sounds in the plugin. I'm just gonna go for the click 02, and it sounds like this. And of course you can control the volume and the pitch. And personally, I like it when the pitch is all the way down because you get that more like LoFi kind of vibe to the kick, and I really like that. And when you have chosen the right sound that you want for your click, then you can actually also control the envelope of the click. So right now it has a really short transient to the click, but you can actually open it up more if you want a longer tail of the click. So as you can hear, as we open the envelope up a little bit more and have it like a longer sustain and release, then you can actually hear some of the tail of the click. So if you want that for your kick drums, you can do that as well. And now we're ready to play around with the length of the kick, and you can do that on this slider here. And it's all up to you and what kind of style and vibe you want your kicks to have. But just a really good tip is that you cannot have a really long kick drum and also a long bass line. So you have to choose. If you already have a really long sustained bass line, then perhaps you need a shorter kick, so it's not clashing with the bass line in the mix, and it's gonna make your job with mixing the track way easier. So you actually have to choose. For me, this track, I can have like somewhere around this area of the length of the kick, because the bass line is not that sustained. Okay, so now we have all of the fundamental of the kick drum in place, but you can actually play around with some of the EQ settings and also the sub volume and drive knobs in the plugin. So we're gonna do that. So as you can hear, you can actually sculpt the sound really much if you crank up these knobs. So I'm really no expert in like what's the right thing to do. I'm just playing around, and I think you should do that as well. So sometimes I really think it sounds good when the EQ frequency is around here and the EQ gain is around like 50%. And then the drive, I usually tend to just listen, and if it's beginning to sound a little bit too much distorted, like sounding like hardstyle kicks, then I'm dialing it back a little bit. And I usually have the sub volume all the way up because I really want those subby kicks. So as you can hear, like if we crank up the drive knob, it really like starts to get distorted. If you want that sound, then you should definitely do it, but I will dial it back a little bit, and that's because we're going to apply some processing to the kick afterwards. So yeah, we actually have a really, really nice sounding kick just within the plugin. Okay, so now we're ready to do some extra processing to the kick drum. So the first thing I start to apply to the kick drum is some EQ and a transient shaper. And I'm doing that inside this Neutron plugin from Isotope. So what I'm doing is just cutting the super low end, just so we don't want any unwanted frequencies in the kick drum. And then I'm boosting the low end around 84 Hertz. And I'm also doing a really heavy dip around here, and it's around the 400 Hertz area. And it's a dynamic EQ dip, so every time the kick hits, it's dipping, as you can see. And that's just because there was some, I think, like muddy frequencies around this area that I didn't want. And then I'm doing like a shelf high EQ here just to get the transients, the high end of the kick to sound more present. And then the next thing here, this transient shaper is actually giving the kick some more transient. So like the click, like it's being boosted a little bit. And then the sustain is being decreased a little bit. So the kick is not that long, but it's gonna get a little bit more tidy, like a little bit more tight. So it sounds like this. And again, I know these are expensive plugins, but you can actually do it with a lot of, I know that FL has some stock plugins that you can do the same thing with. And also you can browse the internet and find some free ones as well. And then the next thing is this passive EQ. I'm just boosting the low ends again. And also this 270 Hertz area. It's just to give it some more body to it. This might get me into trouble because a lot of producers say that you should have your kick in mono, and I agree, but you can actually play around with splitting up the frequencies, so you have like the top end of your kick to be stereo and then the low end to be mono. So as you can see, the kick drum is really like it's really centered, but it still has some information in the stereo field. Like really, really subtle, but I think it gives the kick drum some more life to it. Instead of having it just to play in the middle, you can play around with the stereo field. Again, listen to it in a context with the rest of your elements. If it sounds really weird, just keep your kick in mono. But for the track that I have made in this project, it really works. So again, just play around with stuff. So the next plugin is Guitar Rig 6 and this component called Byte. And what it does is it down samples the kick drum. So you get a little bit more lo-fi vibe to it. So it sounds like this. So I just wanted to remove a little bit of the high-end information in the kick because I wanted a more lo-fi vibe to it. So you can do that with this plugin. And I believe that there are some free plugins that you can use for downsampling sounds. I just use this one because I just recently got it and it sounds really great. So the next plugin is this tape machine from Waves. And what it does is, again, adding some vibe, some warmth to the kick drum. Also removing some of the high-end information in the kick drum and just adding a lot of warmth and body to the kick drum. And I really, really like it. It gives the kick drum a really cool vibe. And the last plugin is limiter, and that's just to control the transient, so nothing is clipping or anything. And also to push the kick drum a little bit. And of course it sounds louder, and that's because it's also getting louder. But I think it glues the sound together a little bit, and it really gets that distorted lo-fi vibe that I wanted for the kick drum. So that's it for the processing of the kick. Let's listen to it in a context with this basic loop that I just made. So as you can hear, we have a really solid kick drum that is banging away. So that's it for the tutorial. Now you're ready to create your own unique kick drums for your next house tracks. And as a little gift for you for watching this far into the video, I have provided some free kick samples and presets for kick 1 in the description down below. I don't know if the presets are working for kick 2, but try to download them and see if they work. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you want more production tutorials. It will put a big smile on my face. So I hope to see you in the next video. Stay safe.